Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Welcome to another live stream on the VS Code channel. Really excited today, and I don't want to spend waste any time, and I want to bring our guest up right away. We got an interesting topic that I want to just jump right into. Let's bring on Juri. Juri, there you are. How are you?
Hey, hey, I'm good, thanks.
Awesome.
Excited.
Thanks so much for joining us. But I just want to jump right in, Yuri. So, can you tell us a little about yourself and what you're going to be showing us today?
Yeah, totally. So I'm going to kind of walk a bit through like what an X is, what we've been doing at that company. Especially recently, there's a lot of obviously AI hype, AI push. A lot of like the developer tools basically integrate AI related features because you kind of have to, right? Like you have to kind of follow up with those trends and kind of make sure you are where developers are. And
Oh,
so I wanted to kind of show off a bit like what we have there on that front, talk about our extension that we have for VS Code, and yeah, kind of vibe through, I guess, some of that stuff. So yeah.
awesome. And X is like the official name of your company, right? I was just like mentioning like I saw the website name was like really short and clean, nx.dev. And how long has NX been around?
Actually, quite a long time. I think we are approaching 8 years now, 7 years, something, 7.5 years. I mean, I've been there for 5 years now. So yeah, roughly around that time. So yeah,
All right.
originally came out of the Angular community because both co-founders worked at Google. And so once they then left Google, decided to kind of do their own thing, they started kind of bringing up a consultancy company. And on the side, we started developing NX, which is an open source tool, mostly for managing large workspaces, I guess. So we can dive a bit deeper into the exact details there. But yeah, that's roughly the story there. And now we are basically expanded into React, into even backend with Java, .NET, etc.
All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and just jump in. Let's see what you've got for us.
Yeah. So I'll most of the time I'd like to just be in this code base. Now, in terms of an X, maybe for people to understand better, I just wanted to super quickly kind of outline it. And so basically, we have just an X, which is basically core package. It's like an npm package basically that you can have. And then we have another one, which is NX console. Let me just like have that over here, which is the code editor extension for VS Code, which I'm gonna show a bit today. And then we have basically what is called NX Cloud. And so this is just to highlight a bit like the overview of where we're gonna move around a bit today. And so NX is, as I said, like it's an npm package. It is mostly a CLI if you want. So here, for instance, this is a project that I set up. It is an npm workspace. So for people that are kind of aware of that, like you have an npm, you have this workspaces possibility, this workspaces property, where you can have different packages in a single workspace. And so basically structure your app around a main application. In this case, it's my shop application here, and then different packages. And so NX basically lives at that level. It is like a CLI, right? So for instance, if I just run, I don't know, all the building and testing and linting, whatnot in this workspace. So this is where NX comes in, brings up a CLI, runs through all these different tasks, and just like prints it out here. And so what it does behind the scenes is nothing else than invoking basically here the package JSON scripts that you might have, and work with those, right? And so that's kind of the main core responsibility of an X. Then on top of that, we have a lot of different plugins, and those are mostly helper things that, like, for instance, you have a plugin for React that just helps you kind of set up React projects, make sure it kind of has correct configuration when you work with React products, React-based products. And you can have those on top here of that NX package optionally if you want.
Okay, so quick question before we get too technical. So like if I was on an elevator and someone said, "Hey, I just saw that you did like a live stream with NX," like what's the, as they would say in Hollywood, like what's the short elevator pitch for me to say in one sentence what NX is for like a regular person that's like new to development? could easily understand.
Yeah. I think we actually have it also, I think, here. So this is probably the best description that you can start with. So we were basically now very much AI first. So we start with like integration with LLMs. We have like at the core this task runner. So this just like takes your tasks that you have and runs them in the most efficient way. But the main value that we want to bring is basically connect these different aspects from local development to your editor experience that you might have, right, which we're going to show a bit today, to especially also CI, right? So for instance, a lot of companies that work with us have these workspaces like this one here, pretty large as well, right? And we want to basically help them work in these environments efficiently, right? So your tasks run fast, for instance, by caching them or running them in parallel, or just running actually what you actually touched and changed. But then also on CI, making sure things are kind of running like at the good speed, such that like you don't have like hours and hours of CI PRs that keep running, right? So we do some optimizations there as well. So it's kind of like across the board where we try to kind of provide integrations for developers to be more efficient, basically, and work more efficiently.
Got it.
At the
Okay.
very
And
core,
CI
it's
is continuous
running.
integration, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So like with that, so before NX, the pain point is that some processes that involves like continuous integration would be painfully slow. Is that like the main thing that's we're helping facilitate?
Yeah, exactly. So especially when you probably like it's not just like for large workspace, but that's probably where the main value starts becoming evident. Because in this case here, for instance, this is a super small workspace with a bunch of packages, right? And this you could just use npm run and like run the task and trigger the task you want to trigger. But as you kind of start growing these, you will notice that your CI will kind of start becoming slow, right? Because you have more and more projects in here, right? Which is handy in one situation because you all have in one single repo. It's very easy to do refactorings. It's very easy to move around, have people onboard, that type of stuff, right? But like then obviously as you keep adding new projects, you keep adding new test runs, you keep adding new builds, and that will then result in kind of longer CI runs, right? And so that's where the CI optimization in particular comes in. But yeah.
Okay.
In that direction.
All right, cool. So I'm sorry. Yeah, you can go ahead and continue now.
Oh no, you're fine. You're good. So basically, that's where just that NX package lies. NX Cloud, that's what we kind of talked about, right? So that's the CI counterpart. So that's what kind of takes your GitHub actions and extracts these different tasks and runs them, for instance, in parallel on different machines without you having to kind of do a lot of stuff and a lot of setup. So in a pretty straightforward way. And the thing that I wanted to kind of concentrate a bit like today is like most of this NX console. And this is our editor extension, right? So this is like an editor extension for VS Code. We also have an IntelliJ counterpart, so it's basically roughly the same. And this is interesting because like we kind of started having that initially almost as like a side project to that NX CLI, right? Because like most of the developers kind of focus on the terminal and they want to work in the terminal. And then NX console was kind of like introduced to enhance things in your terminal. So you can see here, this is the extension, right? It's called NX console. You can find it obviously on the market. And so if you open this up, you can see it kind of shows you the different products that you have, but in a more structured way without all the different kind of configuration that you might have in a single, like in the default view. And then it starts adding enhancements on top here, such that you can run tasks like here, for instance, via visual UI and not like just over the command line interface. And so that's kind of how it started initially. And so we kind of trickled along over time. And now since the whole AI features came along, like MCPs and the LLM integrations, this became much more interesting because now out of a sudden, like we had an extension that an LLM could talk to, where the extension itself would then have knowledge about an X underneath, and so could kind of expose that knowledge to the LLM, basically.
So at the top there, the NX console, the projects directory, that's like a customized directory, slightly different than the normal projects directory, or is that still like the same?
this is basically a view on top of this one here. And what it allows you to do, for instance, you can go ahead and, for instance, start to visualize what does this workspace look like, right? Where we are currently in here. For instance, you can do something like show full graph. Let me show the full one here. And this is basically the projects that exist in this workspace, right? And how they are basically connected. So I have this shop, which apparently is connected to some library, which if you look here, is basically down here in this products. You have this feature product list, for instance, and product detail, right? And this is how they are basically connected. And so the extension exposes this information in a more visual way. Like this is all information basically NX, the tool, the CLI tool has already, and it uses it for optimizing its operations, right? For instance, if you run a task, a build for this shop utils, it would know which other project it needs to build, for instance, right? Via those relationships that it keeps building or keeps maintaining behind the scenes. And the NX console at the top visualizes that to the user and provides a bunch of other facilities basically to the end user for navigating in a Monorepo, navigating in an NX workspace here.
All right, cool. By the way, everyone in the chat, if you have some questions regarding what we're showing, feel free to drop them in so we could have you respond to them.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we did recently is basically integrate a lot of these AI capabilities, specifically via an MCP. We originally started actually by integrating directly as a Copilot chat companion, right? Where you could just like add an X and then you could kind of interact and kind of query your workspace basically. And most recently now we also have an MCP. So basically when you open up VS Code, you have the extension installed, it will prompt you to configure an MCP server, which is that NX MCP. And we will, like, if you want to opt that in, like if you want to have that MCP server running, basically the extension here would host it for you and then kind of configure it here locally in this workspace. And so with that, then you have this at hand. And so whenever you then go in, let's say here VS Code, then scroll down, there's quite a lot of things in here. I should here see the NX MCP. Exactly. And so here we expose basically different tools to the workspace, which is mostly exposing knowledge that NX underneath builds up to basically optimize its processes, right? Optimize its task running capabilities. And so if you look, for instance, in here, you will have this workspace data, and you will see here there's a project graph JSON. And so there's a huge JSON file here behind the scenes where NX builds up this metadata, right, to exactly do things like showing this graph or building up this graph and how this graph is basically connected between each other, right? So if you click in here, you see where exactly that link happens, in which file. And this is all knowledge that behind the scenes NX has, which now over the extension is being exposed to the Copilot, for instance, right? Or any LLM base that wants to interact with it.
So do you still have the option to use @NX, or now because we have MCP, we could just like focus?
You totally can. Yeah, you totally can. If you're in ask mode, for instance, you can totally still like do an @NX here, right? And then kind of interact it with this way. Most recently, a lot of folks which I've observed mostly are in the MCP world, right? So mostly kind of operate here in this agent mode, because you start asking something and then maybe based on a question, you start kind of iterating on top, right? For instance, I don't know, here, we could actually just like try it out, right? We could say something like, list me all the projects and corresponding owners in this workspace. And so I'm just asking it to look at the data in this workspace. And so it will, now you can see it invokes our tool base that we expose. And this is now looking into analyzing workspace. And so let me make this a bit bigger here and hide this one. You can now see, for instance, it knows, well, these are the different projects. This is how they're structured. Now, since I asked it also to list owners, there's also an owner file defined, which NX kind of manages for you. So it also lists the different owners of these different projects that are here connected.
And so this is because you have the MCP set up, right?
Exactly. Okay. This is because I have the MCP set up, which exposes this tool here, which is this one, right? Which at a very high level, obviously it does a bit more, but at a very high level, it kind of parses and analyzes this data, this product graph data, which NX builds up behind the scenes to extract the information that it needs to, right? And so what we figured is that most of the time when you work in these workspaces, right, Like we could call this a monorepo. Like people often call this a monorepo, even though there's just one app, right, and a bunch of packages. But in real world scenarios, basically you have enterprise which have like huge applications in there and hundreds and hundreds of libraries. And so this is great from a perspective of an LLM on the one hand, because you have a lot of data in one place, right? So you can easily like kind of put the context into the LLM and say like, take this component over there, move it over there, etc. You don't have to go across repos basically, right? Which otherwise might be the situation if, I don't know, the products part of the application live in that repo and the orders part live in that other repo managed by a completely other team, etc. So doing those cross border, if you want, cross boundary refactorings is much more harder. But in the other end, what we've seen is like LLMs then kind of, I mean, they get better, but they kind of struggle a bit because there's so many files, right? And the LLM does really perceive the higher level picture. So how are these different, like the fact there's projects, they are linked together. The LLM mostly is, I mean, depending obviously on the prompt you give it, it acts on the file level, right? Tries to grab across the code base and figure out how these connections are being made. So that's basically what we try to kind of help out here with this, with this MCP that we provide here.
Okay. Tamed Craziness. That's a nice name. Says that's what's up. It sets up the workspace.
So this workspace here, you can set it up. Yeah, we have a generator that when you create a new NX workspace, you can basically just run something like, let's say, create npx create NX workspace, right, in a new folder, and it will prompt you through different setups. Or what very often also happens if you already have such a workspace set up, right? Because this is literally just an npm based workspace, right, where you just have different folder structures. Then you can also just run something like npx NX init. I would initialize the workspace and add an X on top, just for the sake of like running tasks faster and optimizing operations, which is very often the case. Like people start setting up on their own, and then they slowly start kind of moving forward, and then they see, okay, like things get slower, and they add an X on top, and then basically start optimizing it that way.
Cool. We have another comment here by Amit Nilajkar. He says, most companies, when I say AI first approach, they hesitate but to follow traditional approach. How do you convince these guys to adopt the latest way of development? I'm trying to like tie this into like what we're talking about here. Like, is there any concern like with like this new project and how you're leveraging AI with customers having like any hesitancy and like what do you say for to ease their mind?
Yeah, no, I totally get the point there. And as I said, like NX has been around for 7 years, right? AI was not really like a topic back then, right? So that's also why it's kind of interesting, because like all these operations, like I'm now focusing on the AI part because we want to show a bit like the integration that we have and those kind of things. But all of those are usable without AI as well, or most of them, right, are usable without AI completely, right? So you just run tasks, you run project, like you generate new projects. You can kind of play around a bit with, like, if you want in a minute, and just work in that way. However, what we've seen is basically now with these LLM tools coming up, as a company that kind of works on or kind of pushes forward that open source NX project, you also need to be present in the world of AI, right? Because some developers just kind of ignore it if you want, right? They just like work normally, they run the commands, they use the tool as everyone did before. And some come over the route of like an LLM, right? So they don't go in here. They just like ask the LLM, hey, generate me a new project, right? And for instance, like, I mean, we can show a concrete example. I could go ahead and say, I don't know, I want to create a new package in here in this, I don't know, in this orders product, right? And so you can set that up on your own, or you could use the NX console, for instance. Let me actually use NX console because I don't have to then remember the command. I can say I want to create a React library, right? And so that will bring up here a UI. And so I'm saying, well, I want to have that in that packages order folder, right? So I say packages orders, and I want to call it feature order, feature orders, whatever. I can choose, do I want to have it bundled or not, etc. Probably the name should be also feature orders, and so on. And so now, let me just dry run for now. I can create this new project, and it will be created in here. So you can, this is just a simulation without touching anything, just to see, are the settings that I gave it right or correct. And so this is, if you want to ignore AI, basically, this is how you would do it, right? You just generate it, it would set it up for you. A lot of companies customize these generators because they might have some custom rules, custom style guides, etc. So they could even do that. In this case, this is just what we provide by default. Until you move on, right? But then there's the person that is fully into AI, and they're like, oh, I just vibe code all the things. Hopefully not, right? But like, they could go over that route. And so they could just say basically it over the LLM, right? They just maybe ask a couple of questions. I want to build out this and that. And then they say, hey, I want to create such a new order project, right? And so we can do the same here. Say, create me a new feed-orders project, which is React based, into the packages/orders folder. And so let's see. As a non-native, basically, transcription doesn't always work perfectly. So I want to have it probably in this folder, code orders, right? And this could, whoops. And this is basically something that could come out of a conversation with LLM of like, hey, I want to do this and that. And then at some point you like generate it, right? And so if I run this one, for instance, this is now where we tried. This is interesting. I keep getting some of these today. Let me just try again. And so this is basically where we try to be on the AI front of side of things, right? Where you can now see, since it's an NX workspace and that person tries to kind of vibe code that feature, we still want to probably have some sort of like coherent setup in these products, right? Compared to the one person that did it by hand, if you want, by running a generator. And so now you can see here the LLM understood, well, I need to create a library. It's React based. So it checks first the workspace structure, or it understands, oh, this is like different products that I have. It knows there are those generators that can scaffold code. So it tries to see, is there one for React? It finds it. It passes the information that basically gave it, invokes it. Now, what we have done here is we even open it up in the UI anyway, because like you might still kind of want to be in control and check first, right? So let's say feed orders, I kind of fix this one here. This wasn't right, and then the name of the order, that's fine, and then I generate it, and now I go ahead and actually create it on the file system, and so we'll see it updates, and on this side now you can see how the LLM picks it up again and says, like, okay, now I see things got generated. Let me just check what got created, and you can now see here I have the project created, right? So this is the kind of like integration we try to kind of strive a bit for throughout all the different things that we do AI related. To combine basically the world of what you would have done before with now LLM-based flow, right? And so yeah, this is kind of like how we try to approach it.
All right, cool. By the way, when you're like entering your voice commands, like the little dialog box that popped up, I noticed it's like a little different than what I'm used to seeing. Was that something special that you did? Are you using a different plugin than what?
Yeah, so I could use just like voice dictation, I guess, here in VS Code as well. It's just like muscle memory. This is Super Whisper that I'm using, which is an external. And there's a bunch of those around. I think, the macOS like dictation mode or something. It's mostly muscle memory because I use it not just like in the editor, but kind of across the board a bit. And started kind of got used to it almost, basically.
Got it.
So
All right. Okay, cool. What else?
Yeah, so basically this is one integration that we have seen now, right? So the LLM invoking the generator, but we've also kind of gone further. For instance, I don't know. Let's go to actually let's commit this one here. I don't want to have a whole lot of things around. If you want to undo, which is like a good tip whenever you interact with LLMs. But one thing is also the interaction with the terminal, right? So Again, back to the question of the person, you can just like go ahead and just like normally invoke the terminal, obviously. Let me actually shop, which is my application here, my shop application. And so that serving up here in the editor. And so here I have it. This is like just like a demo.
What are we doing right now?
We're basically launching the dev server for my application here.
Okay.
Right. And so showing that here in the browser, so it boots up. And what often happens there, if you go, again, more the AI route of things, is like if you have an error, obviously, let's say, I make something super stupid here. I just basically like miss an import and I kind of refresh, then we'll see. Let me see here. We'll see the error unless.
Does the page need to be refreshed each time, or is it like hot loading?
Oh, it should. Like this is a Vite project, so it should be hard load. But let's try again to see. All right, yeah, interesting. Well, basically, you get a stack trace, and so usually what you would have to do or go do is like copy and paste this, move it over to your LLM interaction with Copilot in this case, and have it kind of help you figure out what's wrong. And so what we did is also have an integration between the terminal here, which NX runs. So that's again like combining those two worlds, right? You have the terminal that you run in your CLI, and then you have your LLM interaction, your LLM chat, where you can just like say something like, I don't know, help me fix my broken development server. There's some issue apparently. And so giving it that information. And so there's, again, like an MCP integration that is able to understand what is currently showing up in my terminal, right? And extracting that information here. So it knows the stack trace. It runs again just to see what does the workspace have in terms of information, like where is this project situated that is currently failing. Depending on the model, it might even read a lot more. Like you can see here, it checks like the read config just to be sure. And then, yeah, exactly. It figures out like it doesn't resolve the product properly. Now this time around, that's the unpredictability of an LLM. It actually goes ahead and tries to update the read config, which is totally not like the thing it should be doing, because like in the end, like it's just like an import that it failed, right? But basically it got here that information that this library apparently is wrongly imported. And so it can extract that from the terminal, which is here, right? And have that context again, have that information, and then apply it basically in this workspace. Now in this case, I'm actually going to interrupt it because like it tried to fix the Vite config, which is not like the correct fix. So that's obviously something, sometimes the thing that might happen in an unpredictable LLM interaction.
Right. But before you had the ability to use MCP, this would probably be more of a tedious process.
Yeah, the thing is like in that case, obviously you just like go ahead, like before you have an MCP, you just go ahead and check out what is wrong and just go fix it. Now this error here is obviously just to illustrate like a super simple one or just like a silly one basically that you might mistakenly make. You see it in the editor and fix it. But there's very often the problem where there's a longer stack trace, you misconfigured something, where I've seen LLMs can help a lot because they just have more information. They have the context of the file system, of the configuration files, but very often they miss the context of the terminal output, which has the stack trace, right? And so again, to not have to copy that into LLM, which is basically connected the two, exposing that information as well to the LLM chat there, basically that we have.
Okay. So this basically helps the LLM do its job better because it's able to incorporate the context from the terminal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of the overarching theme in general, and the theme in general, if you want. Like NX as the CLI tool has the information, right, about the projects, the relationships about the projects, about owners potentially. It runs the tasks, right? So there's an NX terminal that we just have seen here below, right, where you see I have here those different tasks running behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it knows the tasks that are running plus the output, right? And then what we didn't look at yet, it also potentially knows what is going on in your CI, right? And so in the end, it is about having that information. And then when you come not from like you as a developer, just like coding in your project and then interacting with the CLI tool, but you come via an LLM-based interaction to give the LLM this information, right? So that is what the MCP does, right? So in the middle, we have NX console, which is the editor extension, which then hosts an MCP, which exposes all this stuff and more to the LLM, right? Such that like when you ask the LLM, hey, what's wrong, or help me refactor this, it just doesn't start from like a more, if you want, dumb, stupid perspective where let me just parse a lot of files. No, it can actually go and see like, okay, you're talking about some sort of like orders project. Let me have a look at what projects we have here, right? How is this related to other projects? So, okay, if you want to move it from here to here, I need to connect this because they're not connected yet, right? So it just gets more, the LLM basically gets more information as you start interacting with it, basically, and show that off.
Got it. So, like, well, as someone's getting more familiar with NX, and if they're new to it, and they have like specific technical questions, if they're stuck somewhere, do you guys have like a forum or like support that you offer, or it's
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah. NX itself is open source. So you basically can just go to github.com now, NX. It's a fully open source product. You can just download, install it, get going. We also have, if you go to nx.dev, resource actually is probably the easiest way. We have a YouTube channel where we publish kind of information about how to use this stuff. We also have regular like live streams. We also have office hours on Discord. So we have like a Discord community where people hang out. And
can you control plus, by the way, so we can see the print better?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that.
Beautiful.
And so basically you can hang out in Discord, ask questions there, chime in there basically and interact. And we now have weekly office hours as well, which just happened today, an hour ago roughly. And so that's also a good place to just chime in and kind of ask you a question. And it's the most easy way because we have a bunch of engineers on the team that usually are also participating. So you can kind of hang out there and and chat.
Nice. I see you guys have like podcasts also.
Yeah, we need to keep that up again. Like this was a project like half a year ago, and we had a couple of episodes where we just talked more about real world projects, big companies out there that are using NX and how they solve the problems with NX, which was kind of interesting. So we had kind of a whole series, and now we paused for a bit, and we're probably gonna pick that up again.
So that's a good question. That's a good question now that I want to ask. Like, what's an example? Like, maybe what's like a highlight of like a big company that was using NX, and like how did NX help them?
Oh, there's a lot of huge companies actually using NX. And so usually what they do or what they look into is mostly kind of managing multiple teams in that one repo, because they have it more integrated, more coherent, and the collaboration is just much better because, like as I mentioned before, you can just interact easier between these projects if you have them in one place. But what we help them with those repos is just to optimize things, right? Which is running things locally, but also running them on CI, making sure CI is fast. And so that's what kind of big companies use NX for, which is those large workspaces trying to optimize their operations. Such as like basically NX is a build tool in the end, like a development tool that just helps developers be more productive.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that might have been like a particular scenario that was mentioned in one of the episodes. I don't know if you were part of the episodes or not, so maybe you didn't. You might not know off the top of your head, but that would have been interesting to know, like knowing these case studies. All right, cool. So what's on the horizon, or is there anything else, by the way, that you wanted to show before I ask about like what's in the future, what's coming up?
I mean, we can actually combine it because like I can show maybe some features that are super early, so super on edge. Like we literally deployed them on preview yesterday. So maybe can I jump into that one, which is bringing the whole thing a level further as well, not just like helping you fix things locally as you interact, but like you push up something on a PR, you go do other work, right? And that PR fails for some reason, have an agent kind of pick that up, help you fix that for you, but still kind of integrate in this kind of editor experience here with the next console, such that you get a notification like, oh, something is wrong on my CI, right? Then you look into it and start fixing it. So actually, we could try if we wanted that as well.
Sure.
So I have here a CI setup basically, and so I can just configure the run here. So basically, you have this CI setup. I should probably format it correctly. So if you look at this one here, this is GitHub Action. Actually, pretty simple. If you look down here, we just basically run nx and tell it like run all the linting, testing, building tasks on all the projects in this workspace, but only those that actually got changed in this run or in this specific kind of change of this PR. If you do this, like it just runs all of them. And so what I can do, actually, I can just super quickly show you something like new feature. This could be a scenario where you just create that new feature. We have still that bug in here, so let's see whether the LLM is smart enough to figure that out this time. And so I just commit this awesome new feature, right? And then I just create a PR for that. Push it up. So we have this run through. And so if I open it up here, we see the new feature here kicks in, starts the CI run. Now, this at the same time, since I have here my repo connected to this cloud counterpart that I mentioned before, so I basically have this cloud configured, it will pick up my run here, which you can see here. There's a comment chiming in. And so it will start kind of looking into this run. And now what we can see in the meantime here is in NX console, and that's the part that I mentioned before, where we want to have that integration of you as a developer working in your project, in your editor, vscode in this case, coding along, have this integration to cloud again. And so here, instead of just like generating stuff, you also have a view that basically shows you cloud runs. It might happen on CI, right? So you don't, basically our goal is just remove that waste that you might have to just focus on your editor, code there. You don't have to keep monitoring your CI. Is it done? Is it still running? Does it fail? Is it failing? And so you just like look into this and you can directly see what is going on here. But most importantly, you will get a notification, right? So you just keep working on our stuff, or even on that PR, just keep refining it, right? While you just push it up the first commits that it might be having. And so behind the scenes here, let me actually make this bigger. You see, we keep running our workflow. Now I have this even running. If we go in the CI config, this line here basically says whatever NX runs down here, just distributes that on that cloud on 3 different machines. And this is the thing that I mentioned before in terms of making things run faster for big workspaces. Obviously, for the small one, it's actually pretty simple because we just have 3 libraries, so there's no second agent, whatever being spun up and created. And so here you now see it fails, right? Because I have that build messed up. And so if I go in here, now let me see actually whether this works. But like we deployed it literally yesterday. So there's a good chance that it might not. Oh, it actually does. So you can see the cloud run detected, oh, there's like a failure. Let me try to fix it. Right. And so it starts creating
how do you know where's the failure? I'm trying to see where's
the failure is sorry, I didn't show it super. Like basically, meanwhile, on here you can see this one failed. Okay. This was the command that we run on CI. This one failed. If you look into it, we see again, this is our stack trace about roll-up configuration here in this app.tsx with that import that we had wrong. And so this now starts creating a fix. And so let me see. So it starts running a fix. let's see where it works. I'm actually trying this out the first time live, to be honest.
No, that's
This,
fine.
this is basically going in the future, as you said before. Okay, no, it actually worked. So you can now see while you were working, you get a notification. Oh, something's wrong. I have a fix for you, and you click on it, show fix. I would show basically here. Oh, I do miss the dependency actually in the shop application, which would point to that product detail because you're using it, which is actually
Mm,
true. I didn't even actually miss that. And it says, oh well, here I have that add symbol forgotten, right? So you just messed up the import. This is the correct one.
got
And so
it.
now you could say, all right, sounds good. I just go and apply that fix. There
Mhm.
should be an apply here. Let me see. Yeah, that's the okay. Now it is. Oh, okay, it validated it to make sure it also builds afterwards. And so once it does, you have that check mark. We can now say, oh, this
It's
looks actually good. Let me just commit this, right? Now this functionality doesn't work yet. So even if I click this one here, it says applied, but it doesn't. But like this is the future, right? Like what is coming in the coming weeks, where it would
oh,
just
okay.
push a commit on top of your PR, and then it would rerun, and it would be good. But yeah, this is the kind of like interaction we're aiming for, mostly for big companies, right? So when you work on these workspaces, you have now an LLM on the side, which where we don't just make sure the CI is fast per se by some other optimization techniques,
Mhm,
but if something fails and there's a fix available that is validated and actually working because we ran the build on the LLM itself on cloud
mhm.
and it is applicable, you just get a notification still. So you as an engineer working on a PR can say, okay, this looks good, or no, you completely messed it up. As we've seen before, sometimes LM just messes up because it looks too much into the config, changes the config where the error is somewhere else, right? And so you always have the way to say, oh no, like let me just fix it. You go. But at least you got some notification without you having to kind of babysit your PR basically and kind of check continuously. Is it green? Is it not green? Pull again, switch branches, kind of like have that more automated and therefore hopefully kind of help you kind of while you work basically on your code base.
Yeah.
And it's kind
At
of
least you're more aware of what's going on when there's like an
exactly, yeah,
issue.
yeah.
So, we're coming to our time to close soon, but I want to like address a couple more questions that were made here by Moa. Uh, I recently ran into issues with remote workspace indexing in VS Code consuming too much memory, wondering if NX's MCP help users avoid or migrate this kind of problem. What are your thoughts?
So I obviously I have limited knowledge about memory issues on VS Code, GitHub Copilot, but like basically what it could potentially help by giving LLM shortcuts in your workspace, right? So as I mentioned before, right now if you have a large workspace, the LLM just tries to grab through your
Mhm,
workspace, right? You say something like, hey, I need to change my app component, right? It tries to grab different variations of what could an app component be named and where it is to find it, right? Where with the MCP that we have, we try to help with that shortcut. We help basically the LM give shortcuts via, via this graph, basically, right? Now, this is obviously visual, but behind the scenes, there's a data structure that represents this graph. And the LM knows about it via the MCP, right? And so it could potentially help by looking at this graph and saying like, oh, I know where the app component is. I don't need to do a whole bunch of grabs and try to different variations, but I can just like directly jump to that project and then look at it. But yeah, obviously I don't know about in-depth workspace memory issues for Copilot in that case.
all right. And there was, well, producer, could you put that question right back up? Uh, have you ever had Agent Copilot in VS Code freeze on resolving or refusing to generate anything, no matter how many prompts or debugging steps you try? Well, it's kind of like off topic, but I guess.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't. Actually, I didn't. Like most thing that, but that's like in the nature of an LM, depending on the model you're using. It's just sometimes sidetracks, right? I mean that's the nature, but that's also why I believe like you cannot just rely on an LM. Obviously, at least not nowadays. Like who knows, like half a year, what's happening, right? But you still need that combination of like just do your know your stuff basically, but then you can be assisted by an LLM on the side to get good inputs.
Cool. He does say this new NX feature looks really helpful. So got some
thanks.
potential fans there. Um, and yeah, and he responds, "Got it, thanks." That's exactly what I thought. Added context of the MCP
Yeah,
is
yeah. In the
very
end, it's all
inspiring.
about context, right? So we were not an AI tool in that sense that we train models on workspace, where we just leverage existing models, which I think is the better option almost, right? Because you can then choose the model that are currently all the time evolving, and we just try to provide the context that we already have in the best possible way in some structural form that like the LLM can interpret it, right, and then make use out of it.
Excellent. All right. So is before I ask you to show your contact info, any last minute things that you wanted to say?
No, I think like this is pretty much it. Definitely just try NX console, try out NX. We keep evolving this and keep kind of working on this as we speak. As I mentioned, some of the features just got landed today morning before the stream, so I was kind of nervous to demo them. But like a lot of the obviously valuable things that we get is a lot of feedback from users, right? So try it out. If you try it out, chime in our Discord community. Reach out to us over our Discord, and like just provide us feedback. What flows you use mostly, what works, where it's kind of less working, so we can kind of fine tune stuff.
Perfect. So, does that mean that the best way to reach out to you from your new fans is through Discord, or
Yeah,
are
exactly.
there
So
other contacts?
Discord is one way. Again, on NXODev, you find most of the resources. There's a blog there where you can subscribe. We have an RSS feed and stuff there. We have also here, if you go to the different community page, there's like Blue Sky account, Twitter account, monthly newsletter, our live streams. Definitely check out our live streams. Putting a lot of effort into those. I'm pretty sure you know as well what it means to produce content on video and stuff. So yeah, those are the places where you would find us. And yeah, happy to chat then.
Beautiful. Well, thanks so much, Juri, for coming on and showing us and educating us about NX. This was really cool. Did not know about it. Man, it's insane how much stuff you can do with technology. Like the future is bright.
Oh
Future is
yeah, 100%.
wonderful. Um,
100%.
so yeah, that's it. And everybody in the chat, thanks so much for joining. And feel free to reach out to Juri via like the contact info that he mentioned, like on the site, and join us again on our stream for next week. All right. I'll see you
Good.
guys later.
Thanks. Bye.